built ourselves up from those ashes, becoming the beautiful place we are today. So Chicago is a physical second city that we get to admire this afternoon. With that being said though, our boat's moving, so let's talk about buildings. Starting with this building above us to your right, folks. This is the Trump International Hotel and Tower, the second tallest building on the entire Chicago skyline, so level 1,389 feet. The building was designed in 2009. Roughly, that is the height of the current world's tallest building, designed by the same architect, Adrian Smith. So, learn about that here. Maybe a fun fact about Adrian Smith. He's an architect from Chicago, so we have a lot of international architecture roots right here in the Liberty City. Up here to your right, you have the American Medical Association, designed in 1971 by Mies van der Rohe. It's formerly known as the IBM building for a long time. A great example of the international style of architecture, which means less is more. Not a lot of detail. We'll talk much more about these a bit later on. That sun is about to come out, so we might want to put the sunglasses on right now. See, I called it. You might want to take your cameras out though too. Take a peek off to your right. The Corn Cob Towers, folks, are the most photographed buildings in the entire city of Chicago. It's no other why. Their official name is Marina City. Designed in the early 1960s by Bertrand Goldberg and Associates, these are the first two residential towers built directly on the north part of the Chicago River. Bertrand Goldberg believed that no right angles exist in nature, so every apartment on the inside of those buildings is shaped like a giant slice of pizza. Your narrow beginning and the widest part is your balcony. You live in a pizza slice, which is like every Chicagoan's dream, I would probably assume. Alright, moving on. Ahead of us, off to your right, folks, a building that says RPM Seafood on the outside. This is the American Bar Association, designed in the early 2000s by Stephen Owens and Mayo. Well, it was a really nice example of the modernist style of architecture. Like a sleek, minimal exterior. The bluish-green hue of the glass reflects the very color of the Chicago River. Which, fun fact, the river is home to over 70 different species of fish. Energy and environmental design. That building actually siphons river water from below it, and it circulates that water throughout the building, and that's what cools it off. All that water is cleaned, reduced in temperature, and then it's returned right back to the river, which is insanely cool. Can't visit the merchandise marts right over here. It's 1913, Graham Anderson Robes and Whites. The merchandise mart here is currently the second largest concrete structure in the entire United States, second only to the Pentagon. On the inside, there's 4.25 million square feet of space and 8 miles of corridors. This building was once so big, I kid you not, it actually had its own zip code. That's how big it is. Back in 1945, the Kennedy family bought the merchandise mart. The Kennedys bought this building for $13 million in back taxes. The Kennedys sold it in 1998 for $575 million. It's safe to say the Kennedys are doing just fine. However, they didn't move far looking for new real estate because the Kennedys purchased the property right next door. This is called Wolf Point. We have a 3-phase project here, 2/3 complete. You have Wolf Point East directly to your right. Those are luxury apartments on the inside.
Yeah.
The building underworks in the middle. This is Salesforce Tower, so corporate offices for Salesforce will find a home here by 2023. And on the other side of it, you see better moments, you'll see Wolf Point West, which is another luxury apartment building, very similar to the one of the group. Architects are Pelkey Clark and Kelly. It's a $1 billion project. Last building to be complete is Salesforce. Now, I will tell you guys, Wolf Point here is a really special part of Chicago. Because right over here, if you can imagine it, this is actually where Chicago had begun as a city. Back in the year 1837, Chicago is becoming an incorporated city. And off to the right side over here is where I saw a lot of our roots. The first tavern, the first post office, the first hotel. That was all initially like right over here. At one of these taverns in 1837, Chicago also received her name. See, our city's name Chicago derives from this Miami Native American word, Chicagua. However, we didn't know this back then, but Chicagua actually has two different meanings behind it. It either means big, strong, tall, and powerful, or smelly onions, which TBH is way more accurate. Onions grew all over the place back in the 1830s. So, anyway, moving on. Off to your left, folks, that beautiful curved building, that is the Residences of River Bend. It's 2002, the Stefano Apartments. Contextualism, in a sense, it reflects the natural bend of the river at the junction. Also, off to your left, we have beautiful Fulton House, designed in 1898 by Frank B. Abbott. The building here was once a cold storage warehouse. It was insulated with both horsehair and cork, keeping things on the inside nice and cold. In the 80s, when it was being remodeled, the architect removed 500 truckloads of horsehair from that very building. How gross. Same architect, though, that did that massive renovation, Harry Weiss. He designed these 4 cottages off to the right. These are called the Chicago River Townhomes. That's 1983. Each of them has their original homeowner, with the exception of 2. One sold last year for $4 million. We will be finding. To your right, we are looking at the beautiful East Bank Club, designed in 1979. The East Bank Club here is one of Chicago's most premier workout facilities. A lot of really famous people have broken a sweat right here on the inside, including Oprah, Barack Obama, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and many other very famous people your tour guide probably doesn't know. But if you guys take a peek, look very closely on the outside. You'll notice this building lacks a lot of windows, doesn't it? And for being on such a large piece of this river, I think they're going to maximize all those views by, of course, adding more windows. Well, it's important to realize, but right behind us, folks, is Chicago's only man-made island. It was called Ogden Island after our first mayor, William B. Ogden. But if you ask any Chicagoan what we call this island now behind us, nobody ever calls it Ogden Island. What do we call it, folks? Someone might be drinking it. Someone said it. Goose Island. Yeah, that's the actual Goose Island there behind us. Irish immigrants would come there to raise geese, and the name has stuck ever since. It's also the name of the fabulous beer we have on tap too. Downstairs at the bar, like Shameless Bar Club. But it really is very good, so definitely try it out if you're into breweries or you're into just really good beer. Check it out. Anyway. Alright folks, let's take a close peek off to your right. We're looking at a beautiful empty parking lot. Not something you think about admiring on an architecture tour, I totally get that. But this parking lot and further north of us will look quite different in the next 10 or 15 years. Solomon, Cordwell, and Benz are the projected architects of the River District project. What's going to be off to your right? We'll have a nice couple like high-rises and mid-rises, mix of residential and like corporate. I will also have a really beautiful stretch of Riverwalk coming in here too. We're very excited about that. Water taxis will also have a stop over here too, once like the commuter traffic picks back up again. So we're really excited about this. Now, speaking of being excited, I have to point out my favorite detail on the north branch of the river. So I encourage you to take out your cameras real fast. Above us off to your left in a moment, you're about to see this beautiful green statue. Guess you're up there? Her name is Progress Lighting the World. She was designed by J.C. Mulligan. She's been here since 1893. Made her big appearance during the World's Fair. She's bright green because she's made of copper. Oxidizes for a brilliant green hue. We'll talk much more about 1893 in a few moments. A very important year here in the city. Let's go back off to your right though. We have lots of new and exciting things coming here to the North Branch. Off to your right, we got a lot of cool things. This is the Freedom Center, designed in 1983 by Skidmore, Owens & Merrill. Now the Freedom Center here used to produce Chicago's 18 different newspapers. And at one point, we totally had that many. However, today it's not quite as busy and booming as it used to be. But these new inventions in architecture, like the floating foundation, it enabled people to build in this topsoil that Chicago naturally was. Also, the advent of the railroads brought in so many people here to the Midwest. Chicago became a central point to the United States. We are going to see excellent class. And by 1871, we had three factories rising to delivery. That's about people moving here for a short amount of time. But we talked about that year, 1871, the very beginning of our tour. And you guys all knew what happened that year. I mean, 1871 was the year of that great big Chicago fire, right? Okay, we're going to do some myth busting this afternoon about this fire, because I have to set you straight on a few very important details. Namely, how this fire had started. Now, if I were to ask one of your folks in the book today, how you believe the Great Chicago Fire started, you can tell me in a heartbeat. Molly, the 1870s, said yes, meteorites all in the West, igniting fires not only in Chicago, but other places like Nashville, Fort County, Wisconsin, the Walmart Yard fire. Truth be told, we can't exactly tell you for certain because 1871 was a long time ago. But regardless, Chicago was destroyed after those 2 days. But again, we're in a small city. Amazingly enough, after we spent 19 years rebuilding our city, we decided to do something really bold. We decided to put our bid to host the 1893 World's Fair. This was the perfect opportunity for us to get some recognition back in our city. So, we sent our very best politicians right to New York to vouch for Chicago, which had proclaimed our city as a phoenix rising from the ashes. And because of our very persuasive, windy, windbag politicians, we won the World's Fair. Thanks. And that fair was so special, it was actually one of those 4 red stars that we have on the Chicago flag. You bet we'll talk about that flag later on. But I'm going to take out my history teacher hat for a moment, and I want you to take out your cameras. Off to your left here, folks, this is my favorite view from this entire boat tour. The multiple pictures of the very good spot. I know our boat is going to keep moving, however there's one river and there's one us. We will come back this way, I promise. That part boat might be Alrighty folks, history didn't cover, nobody fell asleep, so that's great. Let's resume our architecture tour, talk about communal buildings. Starting with this one above us to the right. It's called 150 North Riverside Plaza. Which means the north end behind us balances out all the weight produced on the south side. So the entire south end of this building here is completely suspended above the train tracks going right beneath it. You can probably hear them, right? Now it's starting like this because trains change direction beneath that very specific part of the building. There can't be any sort of pillars or anything in the way of that. One point in my tour, I'm going to ask you to look back, but I promise it's worth it. If you look at the south end of the Boeing building, you guys see the big white X up there? There's actually 5 of those X's up there. And they're all part of this really elaborate truss system. 5 X's lift up that weight from the south end of the building. I would even see above those train tracks. Very cool. To your right, you see a great view of 2 North Riverside, 1930, that's Oliver and Roots. Great example of Art Deco, limestone, vertical emphasis, carvings. These are 3 relatively large characteristics in a very unique style. Art Deco is widely represented, very popular. based around this idea that Chicago itself is the gateway to the Midwest. You can probably picture or hear what that gateway is. Of course, it's the trains, right? You see like an Amtrak or a Metro at some point. I think that's an Amtrak.
That's Willis Sears Tower.
Center 1, building right after its Gateway Center 2. They both
I see the train.
Designed by Bruce Graham in 1983. Fun fact about Bruce Graham is that he was actually a student of Mies van Roo. Now, you might remember us talking about Mies van Roo back there, the American Medical Association. Mies is a very big guy in the world of architecture. Before he came to America, Mies van Roo was a student at Bauhaus School of Design in Berlin, Germany. There was this huge movement of art that basically prioritized breaking art down into its basic building components. When he came to the United States, that style, that Bauhaus school, basically manifested itself in an international style of architecture. Which basically means, like I said, less is more. Focus is on the materials, not so much excessive decoration. So students like Bruce Graham carried on that same philosophy. I'm an art teacher, which I mentioned before. Fifth Art Center up to your right is 1971. SOM is a very prominent architects designed by the majority of our buildings in the city. First three, also high window, will be directly above us, off to your left. The actual up-close version of this, of course, is the Willis Tower. It is Sears Tower. I'll do that name change later. That's 1974, skipping up to now. We went and way more fun facts about the building when we get to those later, I promise. But just so you know to look about it. As we move south here, though, folks, I'm going to encourage you to look off to your left once more. My favorite detail of the South Branch of the river has to be this massive abstract work of art sitting outside this building. But if you look very closely, it's not just a work of art. It's actually a map of the entire South Branch of the Chicago River. And that red box up there, we're up there. That's a U R here mark. Isn't that lovely? I think that's so cool. We're traveling down the map, so directionally speaking, we're going this way towards Chinatown. It's very cool, right? I'm seeing some functional arts. Awesome. Okay. Alrighty, folks. Back at the North Branch, I was talking extensively about Montgomery Ward. And it wasn't just guys like him that made Chicago a catalog capital of the world. It's Sears, Marshall Field, Spiegel, they're pretty easy setting out lots of orders. And it presented the need for a post office. So off to your right, in 1931, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White spoke down former main Chicago post office. This building is ginormous. It boasts 6 million square feet of space on the inside. Basically, back then, you used every square inch of it because catalogs were busy on different days. However, it's no secret that when you go on the road, catalogs are not as busy and booming as it used to be. So as use, so did the post office space. It just became way too big of a building to maintain. It just wasn't efficient to protect the city. So, back in 1996, 26 years ago, we left the post office completely. And the building sat vacant for about 10 years, until it was bought in 2016. The post office today is finished, undergoing a massive renovation. On the inside of that building, you'll find the offices of Uber, Walgreens with the headquarters on the inside, Ferrara Cannon, the candy company, to make lemonheads and red hots, Chicago-based candy company. They have offices in there too, amongst so many incredible businesses. Milwaukee Tool, my sister works there, it's kind of cool. Anyway, it's a really cool thing. Like I said, adaptive reuse. It's the same sort of concept. It's the same building, but just a different purpose. But you might wonder though where our new post office moved to. We're no longer there. We moved right across the street into this new space back in 1996. The post office here is one of the most efficient post offices in the world. But honestly, the most interesting part about this building happened when you first walk inside it. The lobby of this post office is extremely fancy. So fancy, in fact, that the architect spent $20 million decorating the lobby of this post office alone. And you wonder, why on earth would an architect spend such an exorbitant amount of money decorating the lobby of the post office? Well, when we asked him that, he said, listen, everybody knows what the inside of a post office looks like, right? Relatively speaking, it's pretty standard. But I want to make some extra cash on the side. I want to rent it here. Perkins and Will are the architects. Massive, mostly residential developments, 18 high-rise buildings. Also, though, off to your left is one of those finer gems. This River City has been here since 1983. It might remind you of those corn cob towers we saw earlier. Same architects, it's live. That's Berkshire Woolworth and Associates. The building to your left is based on this idea of being completely self-sufficient. A city within a city. Everything you can need is somewhere on the inside of the building. Grocery store, there's once a bowling alley, there's a school on the first floor, even 1 acre of a climate-controlled park on the inside too. Yeah, so theoretically speaking, you never have to leave where you live to get anything you wanted. A lot of people actually don't know this, but this is actually phase 1. The architects have planned for 2 more phases of River City, connected along the south branch. But still very cool. To your left, this kind of lake space, we call this Riverland. It's also being designed by Perkins and Will. A little less ahead than South Campus, there are connected buildings coming up to, as well as a storage shed. Passengers to point this out, we gotta just give it a mention. This building off to your right, these 2 funnels, this is the former Union Station power plants. So the building has been here since 1915, and it used to narrow. We have kind of a funny story though about those plans. Back in 2018, when they projected these plans and saying, this is what's going to be over here, the projected completion year behind all this was 2027. Now, be honest with me, folks, right? This is 62 acres. You see this? Do we think this will be done by 2027? Probably not. No, it's a very astute guess. Beautiful bridge that's coming up ahead of us. Something you might have gathered from your tour guide is that I'm like an absolute nerd for architecture and art, but I'm also a huge bridge nerd too. Today we've gone underneath a variety of bridges. This one ahead of us is really special. This is called the St. Charles Airline Bridge. It's been here since 1919. The bridge itself is called a Peel Trunnion Glass-Steel Bridge, which means there's this free-moving metal frame piece on the right side that moves as freely as it needs to. So that bridge will lower and raise, and that piece will move to counteract any imbalances if there's any. The other cool thing about this bridge, folks, is that when it was completed in 1919, it was considered to be the longest gas-steel trunnion bridge in the world, at 260 feet across. However, fun fact about this river is that back in 1930, we straightened out this section of the river, which means we didn't need as long of a bridge anymore. So we chopped off 20 feet from that bridge there above us, thereby it blocks and in the United States, and it functions like a giant elevator. So you might notice on either side of those towers are these really big concrete blocks. Each block weighs 5 tons. As those blocks lower, out in the middle will raise up to that max height of 150 feet. It is super cool. However, we will not be going underneath said bridge because human held up, but then it's still way too big. So we'll just be really visible. But I'm not getting too close. I've seen that bridge like it's very cool. It's very slow, but it's very cool. Alright folks, I have one more fun fact about bridges. I think it's kind of neat. Chicago itself, every bridge we've gone underneath today are all fully operational, which means they're capable of moving, even if some of them look like they haven't moved in a while. We currently have 37 movable bridges. There's only one city in the entire world that has more movable bridges than Chicago. Can anyone guess what that city might be? about like films and like movies and things of the sort, you might have noticed one of our newest attractions in the city, that glass box off to your right, just on the high level, full of projectors. Those projectors every night project images and clips on the outside of the merchandise marks, just off to your left. Every night, this building to your left side becomes the world's largest digital public art display. It's called Arts on the Marks. Have you seen this at all? Yeah, you recommend it? It is very cool. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's for tonight.
Right there.
It happens every night at 9 and 9:30. Free 30-minute shows. They're fantastic. You can buy them. There's audio and links to what you're seeing. They do change on a semi-regular basis, the shows. So you can come here all summer and you'll see different things. Very cool. Now, the next thing I have is a lot much later beside the boat. It's happening from that fantastic river walk off to your right. I talk a lot about the river walk because it's an insanely cool river. The river walk off to your right, there's 5 big completed sections. These were completed in 2012 by Skidmore, Owens & Merrill. And every section of this river walk offers unique amenities for the public to enjoy. With friends here, again, whether it's racing tasting, there's also a to sit out, I drove that Chicago Tavern to the dog in the world. I've never Chicago home to Corby, so come check it out. I love this though. Let's talk about this building. Where it was pushed back in the center. It's called an assembly reactor building, designed in 1959 by Oliver Bush. Set back in the middle is a very practical thing. They don't have windows, there's towers, help facilitate capital throughout the building. Exos though, brand new looking high-rise, called 111 West Wagner. It's completed in 2013, and the soldiers were the architects. This home's are very expensive place to sit with. The studio that building with finance runs this outdoor basketball. Also luxury. Personal favorite of your tour guides just off the place. This is called 77 West Wagner, 1992. Notice to the very top of that structure. That's all the elements. This is the Leo Burnett building, designed in 1989. Those silver bars that are just gleaming, those are all called silver mullions. And their sole purpose is to reflect natural light directly to the inside of the room. And realize all the dark buildings absorb a lot of light. They're dark enough to have used those mullions behind what happened after 5 years after the building was completed. So, the more you know. Mostly Leo Burnett advertising ads, right? Lots of hearts. We all know them. Speaking of bright and shiny, there's all ladies with the silver tokens. Be nice with it. It's really right. Look what's on your right for a building. Big bright gold top. Can you see it up there? That bright gold top building, that was a by building. Today it's home to the Penguin Hotel. It's a luxury boutique hotel. The top there is real gold or careful building. Which is interesting because the building was designed during a certain era of prohibition here in Chicago. It's rumored to be architects the Bourbon brothers were driven from the American legal model when they got out of inspiration with the building. I can't find that as actually true. It's kind of a big legend or myth, but who knows? Alright. Over here, tall, narrow white building. It's called Mather Tower. Pretty skinny building here. Designed in 1929 by Herbert Little. If you take a very close view, the very top of Mather Tower, I didn't know this on the topper. the lights and the rest of the building is slightly brighter. In 2006, experts looked at that building and they said it was too tall for construction of the sound and the danger of the building. So we had to remove 4 floors from the top of the building, thereby making it surface noise. That's what it looks like. It's just like a really
I don't think.
going to do above us here. All these fronts and rooms, the 11 House was quite well known for the jazz nightclub that had on the first floor. Popular much for the likes of Al Capone way back in the day. Today it's home to a very fancy boutique hotel. It's a great example of the French Beaux-Arts style of architecture. That French colony of columns at the top there says it all. It also features a really nice rooftop bar and restaurant, so if you're looking for a place to sightsee after the tour, I always recommend a nice rooftop, and that's a really good one to visit.
I don't know. I'm asking.
I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'd like to put your attention onto your left. These are going to make a bridge here. We're going to look at our next iconic building, and no, it's not the Apple Store. We'll talk about it later, I promise. The building above it to your left instead. That building there with that beautiful top, that is Tribune Tower, designed in 1925 by Raymond Holden Powers. This neo-Gothic structure is a winner of the 1922 building competition to design the most beautiful building in the entire world. This is a winning design of over 250 entries in the contest. Speaking of recent news, Tribune, Chicago Tribune no longer has offices in their building, but because it's a landmark, we always have to call it the Tribune's Wharf. Today, it's been converted and all these really fancy condos on the inside. You can live inside it, and it's beautiful. It's the trademarks. Historically speaking, you can't call it anything different. It's called the Tribune Wharf. Moving on, I'd like to bring your attention off to your right. We see 2 red brick buildings here. These 2 red brick buildings off to the right, they both belong to the Hyatt Regency Hotel, designed in 1978 by AFC & Sons. And you might wonder, why are we talking about this hotel specifically? Chicago has a ton of hotels. But off to your right, the Hyatt Regency is currently the largest hotel in the city. It's got 2,019 rooms right there on the inside. Those towers are connected by underground tunnels. Behind it though, let's talk about this really tall white building with those black vertical stripes. So you look at the top third of the Aeon Center Tower, formerly was known as the Amateur State of the Oil Building for a long time, back in the 1970s. Currently, that is the 4th tallest building or skyline. For the longest time, it was number 3, but it's since been replaced. We'll talk about that replacement is now. Sitting close to the left to right house, service is British unfitting balconies. Those balconies belong to this building, designed in 2009 by Gene Gang. Aqua won the Everest Skyscraper Award in 2009, which means it was the best residential tower in the world, not just the United States. It was like on an international level, it seems to be the best building to live in of the year 2009, which is really incredible. We will talk much more about Genie Gang in about 30 seconds, so hold tight. Before we do so, you might have noticed the Swiss Hotel off to your right says the name at the very top. Swiss Hotel was designed in 1988 by Harry Weiss. A fact about Harry Weiss is that he's an architect that loved to sail in his free time. So the action said the triangle shape of the building gave us inspiration from the sail with the sailboat. There's also a method to the madness when you design a triangle-shaped building on a square plot of land. That means, theoretically, that none of your views are obstructed by your neighbors. That was at least the idea. Moving on though, before I talk about our next one, I should probably say this. As a tour guide, I've been taught very explicitly not to name any favorites on the Chicago River. It's a rule I break almost on the daily. By Genie Gang. Composed of 3 blocked high-rise buildings. Now, currently, the St. Regis is the 3rd tallest building on the entire Chicago skyline. But perhaps even more impressive, we Condos in this building start at $1 million. And that's for studio. So you should have it. But really good. I Alright, my friends. To your right, the local collection of these new high-rise and mid-rise buildings. This is called Lakeshore East. Lakeshore East, right over here, is almost brand new. So brand new, in fact, that if you rode this very tour just 15 years ago, this whole space off to your right was once a 9-hole golf course. Nothing existed over here back then. Just grass and golf balls, snow was about it. This is nowhere even near done though. We've got another 5 years. We're adding even more residential buildings. So it's a very up and coming place to live as more people move back to the city. Alright folks, let's do this. We have been on a fabulous river architecture tour for the last like 70-ish minutes or so. But you might have noticed I've hardly talked about this river. And I have Chicago 1830s and 40s are very vastly increasing population of river size. However, with so many people moving to a city back then, we began to run into a bit of a problem. We had no place to put all of our So, our solution back today was very simple. We're going to throw all our trash directly into the river. Now, when I say trash, I mean just about everything. Animal carcasses from stockyards, fecal matter, industrial waste, dead bodies, you name it. It all eventually landed right in the river. That was not a very good idea for a number of logical and ethical reasons. The worst reason being, though, this river back then had a very natural flow, or currents, and took this trash all the way out into the lake, right over there. But the lake back then, like it is today, was our main source of drinking water. So you might see where I'm trying to go with this. Waterborne illnesses because we were drinking poisonous trash water. So our solution, get our trash away from the lake, we were going to reverse the entire flow of the Chicago River. Take this current and send it south of us instead of into what we're drinking. And we could do that by doing a few different things. Dammed off large sections of the river behind us, stopping the flow completely in some areas. Then dug a separate canal 15 feet deeper than the already 22-foot depth of the river itself. That separate canal was 26 miles long and eventually connected all the way to the south branch of the river. After roughly 8 years of construction, on January 2nd, 1900, we knocked down all those dams and we could officially reverse the flow. Because water seeks its lowest points, flowing into the lake and seeking the lower areas that we dug. Instead of sending our trash and dead bodies to Lake Michigan, we could turn it all around and send it south of us. We're making our problem somebody else's problem. The thing was always very happy friends, St. Louis in particular. I'd like to say we made amends to St. Louis because we tried Budweiser and we're doing that. But we also, of course, no longer pollute the river. Have to let you guys know that the Chicago River is the cleanest it's ever installed. 2 floors are completely free and open. The only thing going through those 2 open floors is an elevator floor that takes you up to the top units above it. Yeah, one more thing. Anyway, we'll pause here for a moment. We'll talk about Navy Pier very soon, but enjoy the brief from that spot. However, we didn't call it Navy Pier, we called it Municipal Pier. We didn't get the name Navy Pier until 1927 to honor World War I veterans. Then, during World War II, Navy Pier was a base to train 16,000 Navy pilots. One of the youngest pilots to get certified for a pier was our own George H.W. Bush Sr., so kind of cool. After World War II, came home to the University of Illinois at Navy Pier, so if you're familiar or went to UIC, they had a campus there until about 1965. The most recent change was back in 1995. After sitting vacant for a long time, the city invested a lot of money into it, making it Illinois' top #2 tourist destination just after Millennium Park. So, check it out. To your right, though, we've seen this building quite well. This is called Lake Point Tower. It's a black building here. It's been here since 1968. The architects are Shipper and Heinrich. Now, a couple things about this building. Besides its unique shape, it's a very interesting location, too. You can look left and right and probably notice that Lake Point Tower is the only private building that's built along the entire lakefront. In Chicago, we take a lot of pride in our lakefronts being forever free and clear for the public to enjoy, with museums and pathways and harbors and all these things. And when this building was completed, it made a lot of people very upset that we're taking this lakefront and basically building all these private buildings along it. The lawyers have argued, and they said, yes, this rule is very important. However, the loophole is that our building was built here before any official rule existed. You see, the official ordinance protecting the lakefronts wasn't fully written up until 1971, 3 years after this building was completed. Up until then, it was more of a spoken rule, like a spoken word. You just didn't build anything private along the lake until somebody decided to test it. And here we are today. So, to this day, everything east of the lava here is all proof of lava, besides that building. Alright, if you look closely off to the right, we have a really nice example of invisible architecture, which basically just means that there's nothing here. This blank spot to your right was formerly the site of the Chicago Spire project. You remember the Spire back in 2007? It's supposed to be a 2,000-foot tall building in a corkscrew shape that went right there. It didn't happen though, because when the economy took a downturn in 2008, the funds basically disappeared. We got as far as digging a circle foundation for the building, and that was about it. We do have future buildings coming there. There's 2 residential towers designed by Skidmore owns them now, but who else after those? Those are still the name of an old amusement park. It used to be in Chicago's north side for a long time. My grandma growing up would tell me stories of bringing my aunts and uncles to this amusement park, come sailing back down to earth, and there are no seatbelts on any of the rides. So those buildings are named in honor of this big, cool, unsafe amusement park we used to have back in the day. Centennial Fountains off to your right, 1989, that's Dirk Lohan. I'd like to bring attention though to this building ahead of us with these large rounded corners. This is the Sheridan Hotel and Tower. It was designed back in 1993 by Solomon, Corwell, and Benz. We talk a lot about hotels here in the city. This is the 4th largest of our hotels. On the inside, there's a ballroom that's 40,000 square feet. It's roughly the size of a football field. It's huge. The building itself has these lovely rounded corners to it. It's said that the architects were very inspired by steamboats. They used to sail across Lake Michigan back in the day. So, modeled to look like those funnels and those boats. The other thing you'll notice, and you might have actually noticed this today, nice motif along the Chicago River. Many of our buildings are covered in dark green glass like this. And that color choice is purely made by looking at the very river we've been on the entire time. It's meant to reflect that. People ask me very often about the river's color and why it's this particular shade of green. Sometimes you can come to the city, it's almost bright turquoise, the amount of sun that it gets. The river gives this natural green color because of its clay-based bottom and a unique algae that grows along the top of it. You know, the lake water from those locks back there, every time they open, it all mixes together and it creates this natural shade of green. However, there's always a however. If you come to Chicago on one particular date of the year, you'll find this river not to be the same shade of green. What day would that be, folks? St. Patrick's Day, right? Our plumbers union dumps bright yellow vegetable dye into the Chicago River. And that's what dyes that super fluorescent Shrek green. Vegetable dye, it's good for the fish. Always a good question to get asked. But it's very fun. Anyhow, that's NBC Tower off to your right with those elongated black stripes. That's been there since 1989. Another good example of that Art Deco style. Setbacks, vertical emphasis, streamline stone. Over here, those feet are green things like our river. It's got this green glass. This is the University of Chicago Leisure Center, designed in 1993 by Dirk Lohan. By no means, this is not the main U of C campus. They're mostly entirely located on the south side of Jackson Park and Hyde Park. It's one of 37 universities we have in the city, like I said earlier. as we go past this building, I encourage you to look at the west side of it. You'll notice all those concrete bump outs. Those 3 bump outs, where you find the building's 27 classrooms. And you'll notice where all those classrooms are, there's not a window in any single one of them. That's because Dirk Lohan reportedly said that students should not be